Hey!
Hey!
Yay!
There he is.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, boo-boo. So good to see your face.
You too, man.
I love you.
I wish mine was as pretty as yours. I'd be in real trouble.
It's pretty. Okay, it might not be this pretty, but it's pretty. All right.
You got me here.
How are you?
Better than most.
Right. Okay, so if you're just joining us right now, this is mi maestro, Senor Paul Check, and just a little disclaimer. He's similar like me. He tells it how it is. There's no sugarcoating, there's no fluff, there's no bullshit. Straight to the point, and it also has a sense of humor to it because life is funny. So, what's happening right now with you, brother?
I'm just moving into our new home and my new office, and got construction going on, and oh man, it's like a beehive around here. But we've unpacked a massive amount of stuff, so at least we can see the walls and the floors, and we feel like we can breathe now.
So that's like, it's kind of control in the chaos, right?
Yes, finding the information in the chaos.
Yep. So if you didn't know that, Paul is one of my neighbors here in San Diego. He had a property called the Heaven House where you did most of your mastery, most of your private education, where you'd bring people from all over the world and take them through private initiations of all sorts. And it was also basically an extension of your soul, right? And that was called the Heaven House, and that was right up the street from the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And we met through Dr. Nick, who's a one of our soul brothers, very interesting fellow who brings a lot of beauty and love to this world. And as soon as you and I met, it was soul connection from the jump start, and it was like this. I finally have this big brother. It's a different energy that I have with you towards David. David's a little bit different because he's been my cousin my entire life, and yours it's a little bit different navigating through it. But almost instantaneously, I had an immediate bond with you. And I'm completely uplifted and enlightened the moment I'm around you. And it was like, wow, someone who speaks a similar language with me, who's a seasoned veteran in terms of he's done the work, he's got the experience, he's seen all perspectives, and has been able to evaluate his life through those perspectives, was a lot of medicine for me. So I just want to thank you right off the bat that our relationship has been extremely powerful for me, and it's been a great reflection on myself.
Yeah, well, thank you. I love and appreciate you because you're so deep into exploring the truth and creating love and beauty for the world, and Jamie too, and it's fun to speak to people that have a broad enough knowledge and enough depth that you can actually have a meaningful conversation and stimulate each other to grow and to learn more and to create more love and beauty in the world.
Awesome. Absolutely. We seem to have lost the substance over time, and things have become so much more about the minutia, about daily lives. And that's something that I really learned from you, and I really feel from you, is you don't waste your time in the nonsense. You don't really get involved with social media much. You're not into the comments and the side chatter and some random person in the middle of nowhere that has a problem with something. You don't let any of that affect you, mainly because you've built and well-crafted a disciplined machine, which is yourself, and you don't have time for that nonsense, right?
Well, I try to focus on the things that matter. There's an old saying, where it comes from, I don't know. Lord, give me the strength to handle the matters that I can, and to know what not to get involved in because it's beyond my reach. Like I can't change the weather, and I can't change the flight of the stars, and I can't change the choices people make in their life. But if somebody wants help and they're honest and they need help, then great, I can do something about it. You know, with big issues like the whole coronavirus thing, then I think each of us is gifted with genius. I really believe every single human being on the planet is part of the cosmic puzzle, and they're here to learn specific things and share the gifts and talents that they have. So, you know, for me, my life process has taught me that the most important thing I can do is do what I can do naturally and out of my own love and do well. You know, in other words, I'm not a politician. I'm not, you know, a molecular biologist, but I understand holistic health very well, and I understand how it works physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So when it comes to any kind of an issue, then I can offer what I can offer because that's what I'm here to offer. So if I get caught up in other stuff, then I'm really deviating from what I'm here to do. And that really usually just means you're doing a shitty job at something that someone else should be doing better.
Well said. That's such a interesting perspective that actually permeates out into the entire culture, into the entire civilization. Because we've basically, in the modern mechanistic world, we've gone from a species that has intrinsically carnated here for a soul's purpose, a soul's intention, yet we're so caught up in such mundane material crap that it's taken us out of our intention and our purpose and what we're here to do. And if you look at the entire reality that we're in, and I say this all the time, so it's interesting that it naturally just went here, how many people in this world are in their intention, living their divine dharma, why their soul carnated, their soul's purpose here? What percentage of the population is not distracted or confused or dismantled by the modern mechanistic world? It's probably a shocking amount, and it also explains why we are where we are today in so many areas of life. Wouldn't you agree?
I would take a slightly different approach. You know, if you look at alchemy, the first stage of the stages of development is the blackening phase, and it's linked to matter. So, you know, the Prima Materia is the original matter.
Right.
And, you know, matter means mother or to measure. Because the earth is really a schoolyard largely for very young, immature souls, except for those that have come as teachers and guides. And so what you see is that people are very caught in materialism because they're actually here to experience embodiment and encasement and worshiping of objects, because until a person gets deep enough into matter to find God holding it all together and giggling about it, they actually see the object, the car, the watch, the, you know, whatever the thing is that has their attention, money. But as we mature spiritually, we come to realize that everything that we worship as matter is, you know, 99.999 to the 6th decimal point empty. And somehow there's a magical, mysterious force holding it together. So once you get into the matter, then you realize there's another matter at hand. And the matter at hand is, don't fall for the illusion, because really form is something that allows us to have experience. But what's really the deeper experience is the fact that, you know, when you spend enough time with anything material, such as your car, Chervin, when you get into your beautiful sports car, doesn't your love fill the whole car?
Absolutely. It embodies my consciousness. Yeah.
Doesn't it become like a living being that you talk to as though it was like another friend of yours? I love you, baby. Let's go for a ride, you know? So what happens is, you know, ultimately soul is consciousness itself, which is God. Only God can give us a soul. And what's holding everything together is the universal soul. And so whenever we infuse our awareness and our intention into matter, we actually infuse consciousness into that which is relatively asleep. Yeah. But because the truth is unity, we're really having a relationship with ourself. So some people find a safer love relationship with a car or a phone or a house or a bank account, because there they have something that they can infuse themselves into without the kind of challenges that come with deeper, more meaningful relationships, like with someone you're married to. Someone, you know, people love animals because they're less complicated.
So is it a reaction of human consciousness to go where it's safe, where it's not right?
It's definitely where it's safe, because, as you know, human relationships are very challenging. Even when you deeply love somebody, I mean, to the degree you really love somebody, they're usually honest with you.
Yeah.
And because we all have an ego, which is like a beam of light, it casts a shadow, and we can never see our shadow because it's in our unconscious. So the people that we love are the first people, you know, no one's a hero at the dinner table of their own family. Your mother will tell you right where your shit is. So will your dad, so will your brother.
Right.
And so will your wife. I tell people all the time, you're looking for your soulmate. Be warned, your soulmate's the one person that will call you on your bullshit. And even though you deeply love them, you'll know they're your soulmate because you're wise enough to listen to them. So, you know, our dogs don't call us out on our shadow. Our plants don't. Our cars don't. Our bottles of whiskey, our cigarettes, our joints, our pipes, our money. So people start with relationships at the level of what feels safe to them. But the trick is, God's funny, that the more love you have for anything, the more alive it becomes. And all of a sudden you develop a deeper and deeper relationship with it. Next thing you know, the stone that you thought was just a rock or a crystal turns out to be something that gives you access to great wisdom. And you realize this thing's not just a piece of stone, it's a transformer that picks up information from dimensions beyond my own mind. And so the point I'm making is, whatever we infuse love into brings us into a deeper love relationship. But ultimately, we realize that it's only an expression of the greater whole. Everything that's here is an expression of the earth. Yep. And everything that's here is an expression of the sun and the solar system. So as we grow spiritually, our sense of self begins to expand. And all of a sudden, once where we were so, you know, we couldn't live without our alcohol or our sex toys or our money or whatever, all of a sudden we find ourselves in love with the mountain, or in love with the lake, or in love with the land, or just in love with life itself. And we just keep expanding our awareness until all of a sudden we start having moments of complete unity with it all. And then we get to see how funny God is.
So, okay, so that's beautifully articulated, and it takes me down rabbit holes of thought process. So let's go a little bit deeper on that. Are we talking about psychosis, or are we talking about true wizardry and true magic to be able to manifest that this crystal right here that represents so much embodiment in my life, I can use this consciousness as a tool that gets me from point A to point B? Is there a little bit of psychosis in there? Or is it just the construct that we are in as human beings, that this is how real alchemy works?
Well, you know, psychosis is a medical term that means someone with a pathology. And anybody that's out of the consensus norm is considered to be pathological. But guys like me and you, we're very pathological compared to the people that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because we talk to plants, and we make our own plant medicines, and we have a deep relationship with the insects in the house, and we try not to kill things, and we see God everywhere, right? So to most people, guys like me and you are psychotic, but that's because their level of comprehension is really that stone you're holding is just a rock, and why are you such a nutcase that keeps holding on to it, talking to it, and acting like it's something other than a rock?
Right.
But those are the same people that go to churches and think that you have to talk to God as a second person, as God out there, right? So God's always in a second person relationship with those people.
Yep.
But when you realize that you are God experiencing itself, and the universe is God's body, and that God's body is an expression of Buddhist first principle of impermanence. In other words, it's constantly changing. But if I use my clairvoyance to look into you, what I see is something that really looks more like a universe or a galaxy of stars spinning and moving and lights flashing and images all over the place. But you see, if I don't have that ability, I just see a man standing in front of me holding a black stone talking funny.
Right.
But you see, the point I'm making is...
Of course, absolutely. It's your perception is your reality. Your perspective is your reality. What you've been instilled since day one dictates the truth that you witness. So it's not like they're lying or they're just living in full hypocrisy, whether they're godly people and they can't see the perspective outside of them. So are we coming back to ego? Are we coming back to a matrix?
Well, you know, I think the way I like to think of it is God is like a layer cake. And at the bottom, you have, you know, materialism, and you have sort of just logic, and this works, this doesn't work, you know, vaccinate because that's what the doctors say to do. So you have basically children that see the world from very narrow perspectives, right? They actually think all there is with the spectrum of the five senses, but they don't realize for every one of those senses there's a voyance. I see you with my eyes, but I can also see you with my third eye. Yeah. I can feel your words with my heart, but I can also feel you as a human being, as a soul through my heart chakra. I can hear you, but I can also hear, if I listen more deeply, to what you're really saying. Yeah. Not just the words, but what you're really saying. Yeah. And if I listen carefully, I not only hear what my ears are hearing, but I can actually become present with what's listening. Right. I can see who's seeing. I can listen to who's listening. And the deeper you go, the more you find everybody there. In other words, God's layer cake is such that as you grow spiritually and you become more awake, you know, I have a beautiful, beautiful painting of a lotus on my wall. You might remember it from the round room in my library. Gorgeous painting of a lotus. And the lotus is
one of my favorites, by the way, one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you know, it's a profound archetype in Buddhism because the lotus grows out of the mud and it comes from the bottom of the pond, right? It comes from the bottom in the mud. But it ultimately reaches the top and blossoms. So the lotus is a metaphor for the fact that even the lotus knows its ultimate purpose is to rise to the top of the layer cake where it can be one with the sun.
Right.
One with that which is pure light, pure love, pure consciousness. And so, you know, everybody's loving the best they can with the training they have, with the soul development they have, with the parental programming they have, the social programming they have. Yeah. And, you know, there's only, Ken Wilber's research shows that only 2% of the human population is at the integral level, which means you understand the archaic, the magic, the mythic, and the mental. And you transcend each but include them. So someone who transcends and includes doesn't deny people that love stones, because that's a contact with the archaic realm from which our bodies emerge. Right. Someone who really understands God doesn't deny the magic, because the magic is the phase of our consciousness where we were fused with nature and we saw the zebra or the lion or the palm tree as a part of ourselves.
Part of ourselves, yeah.
Which is where you see this Native American and most Native cultures, they really still have deep contact with the magic level. Right. Then we get to the mythical level where we realize that life is really a story, and each of us has a story that's part of somebody else's story, like our family, like our friends, like our co-workers. And when you realize there's only 6 degrees of separation between any two human beings on the planet, which means if you really are intelligent about it, it won't take you more than 6 phone calls or emails to reach anybody on this planet. In other words, if I want to get to Mike Tyson, I don't have a fucking clue how to get a hold of Mike Tyson. His phone number is not listed. But if I call Chervin, I only needed 1 phone call to get to Mike Tyson. Yep. If I want to get to Tony Robbins, I might have to make 2. If I want to get to Donald Trump, I probably only have to make one. I just call up and to the 911 and say, I want to kill him. And next thing you know, I'll be getting close.
No, yeah. I totally get it. I love how you tied that back into that. How the interwovenness and the connections and the storylines behind those.
Yes,
right.
At the mythical level.
Yeah.
You see, at the archaic level, we're really dealing with our connection to our inner self, the connection to the physiology of the body, the basic processes. At the magic level, we're really dealing with hearing, because at that level of our development, survival in nature meant you had to hear really well. The birds were telling you when a tiger was around. The wind told you a lot about what the weather was going to do. So our blood system, the liquid crystal system of the blood, comes out of the archaic system, because the blood's really a liquid crystal. And so that taps us into the cosmos. We're tapped in all the time. We just don't realize it until we go deep enough into ourselves. So the magic level brings us our deep hearing sense, because you can hear something long before you can see it. Then we get to the mythical level. We start telling stories about what we think's really going on, and the wisest elders and the shaman and the medicine men and the chief were the most tapped in. So they were actually working together to try to understand things that were too mysterious, like lightning or earthquakes, or how did we get here? So these stories grow and develop, but that really relates to voice and mouth. So what I'm showing you is, as we grow spiritually, we understand each of these abilities. Then we get to the mental level, which is visual, which is where we're at right now. That's why everybody loves iPhones and technology and biohacking and information, data, because they're coming into the mental realm. But the mental realm, if you don't include the other realms, what happens is you're like a kite with no tail. You just go shooting up and flying around radically, because you've lost the connection to the wisdom of the voice and the wisdom of the ears and the wisdom of the earth. So now you're just stuck in your head and you're bouncing around at the speed of an electron. And so you see a lot of anxiety and a lot of kind of wound up personalities, because they watch stuff on the news and they believe it. They read something by one doctor and then they read something by another doctor, and they're violently opposed, and they're both equally qualified, and they go, well, fuck, who do I believe in? Because they have not transcended and included. They've just jumped up to the mental level because it's a cultural phenomenon.
Right.
So really what I teach people is, hey, look, in order for you to be at the mental level, you must remember what your story is and why you're here, or you're going to be so flooded with information you won't know how to choose from the menu, and you'll just get paralysis by analysis. You must be clear about what your own mythology is, because that gives you your vision, your mission, your values, your morals, your ethics, and your principles that ultimately lead to the ability to make effective choices in your life. And if you lose the magic level, then the world just becomes flat. It's all just, can I make enough money to survive? Can I have the toys I want? But you don't really have any realization of the magic behind that stone you're holding, or behind, the stereo that plays beautiful music, which is really just an expression of someone tapped into the universe playing the music of the universe.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right? 100%. I mean, what you're saying right now and what you're talking about is exactly the reflection that I have with myself every day when I look in the mirror, when I get up on the rise, when I walk naked on the land, when I wait for Father Sun to activate my body, when I understand what UVA and UVB rays do to my entire endocrine system and my biological system, why I pee on my cactus, why I speak to my cactus, all of those things. Without those things, my life becomes stuck into something that's so limited. And that limited self is only getting information and feeding off what the mainstream is telling me. And I've radicalized, dismantled my entire lifestyle, my entire thought process. And then the irrational and rational mindset starts winning the tug of war, and everything has to be rational. And what you just said, I just want to say thank you very much for articulating that to perfection. I hope everybody listening really understood the perspective that Paul is bringing. All of the shamans, all of the ancient medical doctors before all believed that everything around us is alive, and we are incorporated and intrinsically related to all of that. Humankind over the last 150 years, 200 years has separated us from nature. We've become almost machine-like, which is, we talk about it about Rudolf Steiner, about the Ahrimanic spell, which we are now just material. We're just an object. There's no soul conscious. We're not related to anything in nature. But even technology is showing us today that the human body is completely related to all the energies and technologies of nature around us. We are not separated from that. And it makes sense why we are in the state of affairs that we are in right now. When we have concrete jungles, we have all different types of weird electromagnetic frequencies, and we have generations of children that have become adults that have not even evolved as humans. And these are the decision makers that we're dealing with today. And the science has now become the new religion. And it's not a real science that's based on the scientific method. It's agenda-based science, that they have an agenda, they put it in power, and they push to get that result, and they only show you that result. That right there is dismantling and crippling our ability to be human, to go back to who we are. So I'll leave it right there, but I'll say we've forgotten who we've forgotten. We've forgotten what we've forgotten. We've been stripped of our ancestors. How many people can you come across today and ask them, tell us where you come from, your lineage, your bloodline? What kind of, were they farmers? Were they this? What relationship did they have to the soil? This is why I'm such a procurer of biodynamic farming, not because it makes the most mineral dense food in the world, but because of our relationship back to the soil, which is one of the most pivotal aspects of maintaining a natural world. These are all alchemical thoughts that are engineered within us. It's not outside of us, it's inside of us. Go ahead.
One of the things I recently talked about with Ervin Laszlo, one of the greatest scientists and thinkers in the world. And he's written like 25 excellent books. And he's 84, 87 or something like that now. But I said to him, I said, Ervin, aren't you concerned about the fact that science has become the modern prostitution ring? They'll validate anything for money. And he said something quite profound. He said, Paul, that's not science. He says, those are technicians and technologists. Those are people that have technical skill, but they're not real scientists. Real scientists pursue the truth. He said, we've gotten to the point where technicians are being promoted and believed in as scientists, but they're always selling something. But real science is after the truth.
That's right.
So he said, be very aware that much of what is being promoted as science today is really a bunch of technicians masquerading as scientists.
Yeah.
And it's very important for people to make that distinction, because almost everything from the drugs on the market to the gimmicks on the market to whatever it is,
everything
that's getting people in trouble,
yeah,
is actually validated by technologists paid by the corporations that have an agenda. But real science looks at the truth. And, look at all the struggles Albert Einstein had with people like Erwin Schrödinger and Max Planck and all the guys that came up with quantum physics, because he said God does not play dice. The point I'm making is Einstein was in pursuit of the truth, and even when it challenged him deeply, he still had to confront the mystery, right?
Right.
But he didn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, just because your model doesn't fit mine, I'm not going to listen to you guys, because he was a scientist. A technician doesn't give a fuck if they make nuclear weapons, as long as they get paid. A technician makes a microwave oven and says, I don't give a shit if it kills babies in hospitals or ruins people's food or jacks up your antibodies because the food's dead and it destroys the water molecules. as long as I can sell it. But
Right.
a scientist looks into the truth of it. And so
True scientist. Yes.
what I'm saying is that it's very important for us to realize a lot of what's being sold to us under the guise of science is not science. It's technological marketing.
Yep.
Disguised under the heading of science, but our culture has been programmed to believe scientists as though they were priests or doctors. Basically, our religious programming has brought the majority of the population, about 70% is in this batch of people, the traditionalists from Ken Wilber's research.
Yep.
And they believe anybody wearing a white jacket because they've been programmed to believe priests and hierarchy as absolute truths. Well, part of the person's development at that level is to start questioning. Steiner talks about the awareness soul. And he says, the awareness soul emerges. First, we have a mineral soul, then a biological soul. Then we have an intellectual soul or an ego. And then the awareness soul emerges when we begin to question our own thoughts and beliefs honestly.
Right.
Then you become aware that there's a lot more to the so-called truth than meets the eye.
Right.
And you start questioning, is my thought, I'm going to be poor, the coronavirus is going to wipe the world out, nobody loves me. If you don't question your own thoughts, then you're deeply entangled into other people's beliefs and you never really know who you are.
Absolutely. You've never been given an opportunity to use your own discernment because your entire guidance system comes from a dominion outside of you that's holding force on you. What is your thoughts when you rise every day? Why do you have that emotional response? Why are you judging that person? Why are you living in fear and frustration? What are all those things? It's not from their karma. It's not from their soul. It's from something outside of them that's programmed them. And that energy is basically permeated throughout the entire culture right now. And you hit it right on the nail. If you have a white coat or you have an MD, you are in God mode. So I always have so much respect and so much honor when I meet doctors and I meet scientists that operate with that human condition and understand and operate from a place of truth. Not because they don't want to be the nail that stands out in front of the rest because they're the first one to be hit. And I think right now we're entering a level of consciousness because of this entire COVID-19 thing. And there's a lot of energy swirling around right now. There's a lot of people hitting each other right in the middle. And we're at interesting times. This is an interesting time to be alive right now. We've been under the scrutiny or the tyranny of the medical mafia for quite some time right now. And that medical mafia has been removing truths left and right. And I think it was Voltaire or Aristotle, I'm not sure who said it, what's more dangerous than a lie is a half-truth. Mm-hmm. So a lot of hiding in false truths and fake truths. And it's so easy to manipulate a population at the drop of a hat. It's called problem, reaction, solution, right? And it speaks on everything you just said. You create the problem, psychologically, there's a reaction, and then you provide the solution to the problem that you covertly created. And when a human brain and consciousness doesn't have rooted legs into the soil, doesn't have a purpose, isn't connected to everything around them, has been running only on a part of the brain that's been conditioned, they go into a paralyzed fear when the problem's presented to them. And they'll take on any solution to provide any type of balance to get them out of that fear. That's just psychology 101. And
yeah, there's a couple of perspectives I want to share. One, everything you're saying I agree with, but there's another caveat to that.
Yeah.
Me and you and everybody else listening and not listening cannot blame it on the medical mafia or the government because we allowed it.
Exactly. I'm not blaming it on them 100%.
We all allowed it.
We've given our power away. We've given our power away. Absolutely. But children have generationally been put into this, because of their upbringing, which is why I'm a big believer in Waldorf education and allowing a child to develop their own consciousness versus a prefabricated curriculum where they're not developing those synapses and developing those energies to be able to cultivate. So I'm with you 1,000,000%, but now it's like a chicken with its head cut off and it's going 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
And so here we are at a very special time. Carl Jung said, no man is fully alive until he has the power to destroy himself. So right now we should all be very alive, and we should all realize, even if it's not our own power, Bill Gates has the power to destroy us, but he's one of us. Donald Trump has the power to destroy the whole planet. All the crazy prime ministers and foreigners with nuclear weapons have the power to destroy us with the push of one button. One nuclear war, we're all gone. So we should all feel fantastically alive right now and say, okay, now that we have the power to destroy ourselves, we know that that's doable. But what's missing is enjoying ourselves and realizing our oneness with the planet and the universe and creating harmony. And instead of constantly trying to get richer and richer and have more and more, say, wait a minute, Donald Trump just spent $2 trillion on a bailout for a hoax. What would happen if he would have spent $2 trillion on public education, on how to eat, move, breathe, how to support local farms, how to exercise, all the basics? It would have shut the medical system and the vaccination system and the drug system down. It would have been a big threat to the economy, but it would have given us the chance to really take responsibility for ourselves. I tell people all the time, look, you don't get fat overnight. When 62% of the world population is overweight and obese, you have to realize they look in the mirror every day, day after day, month after month, year after year, go bigger, 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 and don't ask the question, well, the doctor's pills aren't working. The diet books aren't working. Maybe it's what I'm eating. Maybe there's something I'm doing. Well, obviously you're doing it because you're making choices that are making you fatter and sicker, or giving you a disease, or making your brain not work as well, or ruining your sex drive, or ruining your willingness to go out and grow yourself. So the point I'm making is, if we don't accept responsibility to pay attention to the power of our own choices, then we bring ourselves to the edge of ourselves. And then what do most people do? They want someone to rescue them with the same bad ideas that never worked in the first place.
Absolutely.
But you see, the world's set up to push you back into yourself. And if you have to die 1,000 times to figure it out, so what? At the level of consciousness, time's irrelevant.
100%. We've intrinsically been removed of our power, our God-given power to see, to feel, to touch, to have Gnosticism within, to know who we are. That's what samadhi is, right? And that's why, you know, they have different forms of medicine and different forms of experience. The samadhi is dying before dying. It's the actual taking on the complex of transition before transitioning out of the mortal body. And you talk a lot about ego, and immediately when we think of ego, we think of money, we think of cars, we think of other things like that. But ego is believing you are this body, right? That this flesh and bone is what you are, and that's it. And that's an energy that I feel keeps us victim and trapped in so many ways, and allows us to be pushed in directions that, if we had inner authority, like Steiner says, or inner awareness, or super sensible knowledge, none of these things would ever come to pass. I mean, can you imagine that every individual out there was completely grounded into their own reality and knew that the choices that they made for themselves and their family was the guidance chip to taking them from point A to point B, that they did not feel victims in their body, that they felt like they had control over their health, that they had control over their abundance, that they had control over their happiness. Mainstream does not feel that way. We've been indoctrinated with a lot of energy, and you're right, it comes from within. So let me ask you, anyone listening here right now, what are some of the steps that you have taken in your life? We're going to go down very, very detailed concepts. I think that will happen on the next live, and we'll start going into some of the deeper parts. But just anyone who's just starting out, who's, you know, had a tough life, you know, parents that were completely bought into this standard hype, bought into the basic structure of how life should work, standard education, standard system, working to make ends meet, given their, paying their taxes, doing these things. And they're also very judgmental on anything that's outside of the social norm, where people like you would seem cuckoo. What's your advice to them?
Well, my advice is really to look around and say, why are all these different viewpoints, perspectives, and ways of living here if they're so bad, and why have they always been here? Truth is relative and good is relative, right? What one person or group thinks is good, another one will kill you for doing, right? So really, I think that the first thing to do is just look around and say, well, if it's here and it's been here and it keeps coming back, it must be part of the equipment in Spirit Gym that's here to teach us to learn, to look at the variety of viewpoints, to look at the variety of possibilities. There, you've got people like Martin Luther King, and you've got all sorts of people who came from seeming nothing to become really great people. And you've got people that were born into very wealthy families that can't find their ass because they're so used to being raised on a silver spoon. So I'm showing you the polarity of possibility is right in front of us.
So is it removing the victimhood from the jump and getting out of the victim mentality, that scarcity mentality? Because that's what I talk about every single day is you got to get rid of that victim. You're not a victim, because it's shackling every effort that you have. Before we get into deep meditation, before we get into philosophy, before we get into Native American traditional stuff, before we get into all of those things, at the root, we got to remove the victim, right?
Yes, but I look at that slightly differently. Nobody's going to do the work to take away their victimhood until they have something that they feel connected enough to not to need to be a victim anymore, because ultimately a victim is somebody who uses victimhood as a means of getting love and support from other people because they found that that's the only way they can effectively get it consistently.
The codependency energy, right? Codependency energy.
So what I'm saying is, in my system, the first thing you do is you identify, Jerry Wesh says, if you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis. Being a victim is a perpetual crisis.
Correct. Yep.
I say if you do the things that your heart calls you to do and that you love to do, even if you don't make as much money, if you're doing what you love to do, you're making love every day. If you work for money, you're just making money and you never feel whole. So if you say, what is it that really I feel gravitated toward? What pulls me forward? You obviously follow that natural pull, or you wouldn't be so passionate about what you do. No. But once we realize that if we just be honest with ourselves about how we best express our love, and we start making love every day, when we're making love, we start being more loving, and we start attracting more loving people and more open and more interesting people. That's why we get along well, because we're both living our lives based on the principle of love, not based on the principle of fear, or I'm nobody unless I have this amount of money. I mean, if you and I were completely broke and naked, we'd still find lots to talk about and laugh about and giggle about. And we wouldn't need to be victims with each other. We'd say, well, let's just go hunting and do a little prayer to Great Spirit to help us out. And then one thing would lead to another, and the next thing, so when my point is,
this is the real
without love.
This is the real law of attraction.
To do it. Huh?
This is the real law of attraction, right? This is it, right? Absolutely, 100%. And so, yeah. what I feel is, I talk about momentum, because sometimes we just are only thinking 10 years from now, or this, we're so out of the present, right? We think that in order to become happy or enlightened or successful or to have a beautiful relationship, it's this big journey that has to happen before you can get there. And it basically becomes this like sabotage. And so for me, and everything you're saying, it's momentum based, just like, you can, in order to become a couch potato and to be completely stuck to a TV, which is telling you a vision every day, and to start getting unhealthy, and to start gaining weight, and to start becoming diabetic, having cellular metabolic problems, autoimmune issues, that's all momentum based. It doesn't happen overnight. These are chronic issues that affect you emotionally and physically. Conversely, what you're talking about, it's building momentum. It's having a few wins every day. Start doing things the opposite that you've been doing your entire life. Start looking things a little bit different. Look at your sphere of influence. Where are you getting your information? Where are you getting your news? Who are your friends? What kind of food are you eating? What kind of things are you experiencing? I really am a big advocate of start looking at life as all inertia and momentum based. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think when you're using the word momentum that way, it's a bit confusing. That's conditioning. You see, you don't have free will when you're acting out your conditioning. You're just doing what your parents did or doing what society does. So you don't have free will until you rise above your programming, question your own thoughts, and ask yourself, is this really working? I'm getting fatter every day. I'm getting heavier. Is this really working? I'm going to the gym and training like hell, but I'm not putting on muscle. There must be something going on, because my buddy, he's been doing the same training program and he's growing muscle like crazy. So there must be something happening in me that's not happening in him. So the point I'm making is, if you just do what everybody else does and you don't get the results you want, well, obviously you're being invited to get outside of the box and say, wait a minute, there's something unique about me that I need to look at. And it's,
right.
You know, some doctor's not going to look at me from that perspective. In other words, we have to engage ourselves. People, if they would just realize how amazing it is to have a human body, Yogananda says, if you realized how many souls are waiting for a human body, you would be dancing and singing that you have one.
Yeah.
He says it takes about 8 million reincarnations just through the kingdom of nature to get to your first human body. And he said there's about 60 billion souls waiting for a body. My point is, if you realized it takes the entire universe to give you a body, you're in the most complex weave of intelligence, matter, and energy that we know of anywhere. And most people walk around living like their life's the shits, and they're trying to live through technology like phones and cars and gadgets. I'm like, go look in the fucking mirror, man.
Right,
You
exactly.
are the technology.
You are the technology. You are the God. You are the mirror. You are all.
When you celebrate yourself and know this is my garden, I gotta water here, I gotta weed here, I gotta keep the soil good here, and then the fruit that grows is a product of that awareness, you realize it's way cheaper and easier to love and care for yourself. And out of that awareness comes a real understanding of what's happening in nature, because you can't care for yourself without caring for the planet. Right. You can't care for yourself without caring for your friends and your family, because love is a boomerang. You put shit out, shit comes back.
Absolutely.
You spend money on shit, you eat shit, you become shitty.
Yep.
Right? So, you know, I think spirituality doesn't have to be complicated or technical at all. Just pay attention to the magic and the mystery that you sleep in and walk in and breathe in every day, and do the things that make you feel good, and be less interested in money and more interested in creating a sense of happiness and wholeness. Because if you practice that, you get good at creating happiness. You get good at looking into the depth of relationships and realizing that person's not being unloving to me. They're just sharing their perspective. I don't have to buy into it, but I can also be honest and say, wait a minute, I've been fired from 5 jobs for being late, and now my spouse is telling me I'm a pain in the ass because I'm late all the time. Maybe I should pay attention to the fact there's a pattern here, instead of making everybody else an asshole and then playing the victim. Exactly.
So everyone, I think at the center of what you're talking about is intention. What's the intention at the main point of all of this that we're doing? And how can you use intention to be, to work profoundly with you as opposed to against you? And whatever decision you're.
Yeah, the prerequisite of intention is awareness. You can't be more on top of your intention than you are of your awareness, because awareness is what's looking through intention. The word intention means to put spirit into
tension. To put spirit into
tension. Exactly. Yep. God is pure potential. You want to be rich? If that's your intention, then you have to act, live, breathe like a person that creates abundance, or you'll never be rich.
Absolutely.
If you want to be spiritually rich, then act, breathe, and live as someone who's spiritual rich, and find an example that you can follow. Study Rumi, study Jesus, study Buddha, study Krishna, study Lao Tzu. You know, there's so many examples around us in any direction, from Elon Musk to the great scientists, to the great politicians, to the great Indian chiefs. You can, if you want to be a great surfer, study Laird Hamilton. He's a buddy of mine, be a great guy to study.
I know Laird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah. We're all here to show each other what it looks like to live that way. So if you're not sure what to do with yourself, find out what you love to do and say, okay, who does this really well? Who exemplifies the life I want to live, and then become their student. And that's why for the longest time there's been religion around in spiritual teachings. You've always had masters to teach you, and you know, you got to be careful about choosing your master, or you become what you don't like.
Right. Absolutely. Well said. I hope this conversation is giving you a little bit of enlightenment. And again, everything that we talk about, this is just our version of our reality. It's our perspective. It's your decision to basically take, you know, your God-given discernment and see if any of this resonates with you. If it resonates with you, fantastic, great. Makes no difference to us. If it doesn't resonate with you, even better. It doesn't matter. This is just us being a messenger and communicating as brothers, because we operate with similar perspectives. We're coming from the same place in terms of our heart, in terms of our microbiome, in terms of our brain, in terms of our experience. And at the core of it, I would say, is love. And love is what gives me free will. Without love, I don't have free will. I've come to that conclusion. And we can define that later down on another channel, but it's having true love that's unadulterated and not compounded by anything man-made or anything that's been forced down my mouth by anything outside of me. And that love comes from a place of really just genuine care. I really, really have an emotional care for people out there that are struggling, people that are going through it. I have a genuine care for our mother. I have a genuine care for children. I have a genuine care for the philosophies that were laid, you know, before us. And that's just what I love to do. And that's where my free will comes from.
I just want to share too that, you know, we've been raised in an education system, and we're in a culture that is based on an input-output model. I invest this much money in a stock, I'm going to make this much money. But then the stock market crashes and you're broke, and they go, what the fuck happened? You invent a widget, you're sure you're going to be rich, but all of a sudden you get insurance claims against you because it breaks in people's mouth and hurts them, and you go, oh, what the hell happened? The point I'm making is our culture has been programmed into, you do this, you get that, and it's guaranteed, but they've dropped the most important word: process. Life is not an outcome, it's a process. A relationship isn't an outcome, it's a process. Spirituality isn't an outcome, it's a process. Gaining abundance isn't an outcome, it's a process. You can lose it as fast as you make it, right? So absolutely, what I'm saying is, if you engage each day with the magic and the mystery of knowing there's a process unfolding and that we're all involved in it, for better or worse. And the worse is just an awakening opportunity, right? The pandemic was a social chance to see our shadow right in front of us and say, what are we going to do now? Right? And if you're hanging around being a victim and not doing anything because you had a whole lot of time for some deep spiritual growth, then you're just part of the problem.
Yeah, you get ran over. What you resist, you persist. You either get ran over or you go and you flow with it. And I like what you said. You know, what is that quote? The elevator to success is broken. Take the stairs, right? Yeah. And I always look at that, and I understand. Like, for example, abundance, financial abundance. If you're just chasing money because you've been taught that that's your savior, you're never going to find it. And you'll do a lot of crazy stuff in order to get it. You'll sell parts of your inner self to do it. That happens all the time. If you're chasing a good physique, you want to have an attractive body, you want to be fit, but your only goal is just to do it for aesthetic purposes, it's going to struggle, and you're not going to get there properly, and it's not going to last. But if you're in intention because you're aware and you found something you love and you're contributing to society, the abundance will come with it. If you're in intention because you want to drink high vibrational water, mineral water, you know how to detox the body, and you're eating foods that work with you because you know how it works, then the side effect of that and training and being part of the land and lifting rocks and doing all those things is a strong physical body that's strong, present, and clear. everything exactly the philosophy that I live on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I was trying to point out is that life is not an outcome. It's a process.
The experience, yeah.
And you're making life the way you make love. If you get up in the morning and you expect other people to make life for you and other people to make love for you, you're a fool and your life's going to be painful. But
Paul,
if you get up in the morning,
any last words? Because this video is going to end and we're definitely going to have a part 2. This is really good. We've had, I think, over, altogether 7,000 people have joined this in and out, and this is going to get a lot of feedback. This was a good beginning start. Do you have any last words right now?
Lots of love and blessings to all of you. Make each day special because it is.
I love you, brother. I'll see you very soon. I'll text you in a little bit. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you are. This is just the beginning, brother, forever.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Love to hang out with you and Jamie and
the whole crew. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll talk to you again. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.